So there's one thing that my wife says I should never do on stage. Well, there's two things actually, but I'll tell you one of them, and that's dance. She reckons I dance like Elaine from Seinfeld, if you're familiar with that reference, okay? So that's one of the things you're not going to see. So when I see people like that on stage, I'm always amazed by what people can do that I absolutely can't do. I want to kick off the session today by just saying thank you. So thank you, first of all, to all of you for attending. Thank you for taking the time to come and spend some time with us today. Thank you to all the people that actually put the effort into putting this whole thing together. Thanks to the more than 100 representatives from our business partners that have come along to this as well. And there's almost 100 Googlers that are here as well. It's a huge responsibility that we have today to make sure that today is valuable to you. We hope that you get a huge amount of value. We're going to be checking in with you throughout the course of the day to make sure that you're getting value. And we put a lot of effort into making sure that this is something which is relevant to you as well. And we really, really appreciate the fact that you're taking some time to spend it with us and understand more about the things we're doing. In comparison to last year, this is a much bigger event for us. More than 2,000 people have registered. As I mentioned, we have more than 100 people that are attending from our business partners and close to 100 Googlers as well. In addition to that, we have over 300 people watching the stream online. So it's fair to say there's a little bit of interest in the stuff that we're doing. And we're going to make sure that it's presented in such a way that's relevant to you and hope that you take away something that will help you in the business or activities that you're involved in. Over the course of the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to talk about two things. Two things you already know, but I'm going to give you a Google perspective in terms of those two things. Those two things are as follows. Digital is transforming the way in which businesses work, disrupting the way in which businesses work, and creating opportunities for new organizations. And we see that all the time, and I'll show you some examples about that, and I'll talk about some of those elements. The other thing is, in that world, collaboration is beneficial to organizations. When people create, think, reason together, they create outcomes that make their companies stronger and have better outcomes than those organizations that don't facilitate that type of interaction. And over the course of the next 20 minutes, I'm going to explain how those two things come about. Let's kick off here. 5.2 billion smartphones in the world. And that's only a portion of the total number of connected devices. And over the course of the last decade or so, there's been a huge change with respect to the way in which we use computing. What the first thing is that we actually pick up when we wake up in the morning. First thing I reach for is my phone. I switch off the alarm on my phone, and I would imagine a lot of you use your phone for the alarm. I happen to keep it in another room because that's the only way I'm going to get up to switch it off. And then after that, I check in on what emails have come in over the course of the evening, and I have a look at what are the things that I need to focus on for the day, and I make sure that I've got all the things that I need for that particular day. And I would say that's probably not that dissimilar in a lot of households. Maybe it's sad that the first thing we reach for is our phone, but in some ways it kind of gives us some direction in terms of the day. By 2020, there should be 50 billion connected devices. And as you no doubt have some idea, it's not just your phone that's the thing that connects you to the network and to other people. It's the tablet that you pick up after that. If there's a device that has a keyboard, you're probably still touching that at some point during the day. It's other devices, whether they're wearable devices like watches or something that's tracking your fitness or some other type of element that's connected in some way to the way in which you work. By the time we get to 2020, we believe that the number of connected devices is going to far outstrip the number of people that there are in the world today. On average, we interact with our smartphones about 150 times a day. Now, that's about 6 to 8 times every hour. There's a whole bunch of things that you're doing with that, and you're familiar with these things. You look at your calendar, what appointments are coming up, you use it to prompt the things that you're going to be doing next, you figure out what the traffic's going to look like, you read your email and try to keep on top of that, as most of us do. You look at news, you reach for entertainment, you probably make a restaurant reservation, you're thinking about itineraries, and if you need to check in for a flight, and you're probably checking in for a flight using the multitude of different apps or sites that are available for that. And probably like me, you're doing most of your business, most of your banking online as well. These devices have become the center of our lives. Those devices are driving two of those things that I mentioned before, this transformation to digital, as well as this way in which we work together and ways in which we collaborate. Gartner suggests that there's a huge change in terms of the way in which we operate. And as a consequence of this move to digital, there are new things emerging. There are new business models. And I'll show you some examples of some of those business models. People are reinventing the way in which they connect with customers, and they're reinventing the way in which they engage and think about brands and think about the way in which they talk to customers. They're thinking about how their industries actually work, and their concept of digital within the industries is transforming all industries. They're also thinking about what this means in terms of recruitment and the way in which they think about the people that they need to hire in their organizations. Up to 52% of business leaders believe that digital is the main thing that is transforming their organizations and will be for the foreseeable future. And as a consequence, this transformation to digital is something that we need to be spending our time on and be thinking about. Here's some examples of organizations that didn't exist a decade ago, that have totally transformed the way in which one thinks about digital. And the statistics associated with these organizations are absolutely amazing. And you've probably heard of at least two, if not all, of these different organizations. I had the opportunity to meet Jodie Fox from Shoes of Prey a little while ago. Jodie started this organization where women can essentially design the shoes that they want. And not only are those shoes delivered to them in a fantastic, with a fantastic experience, but they're actually comfortable as well. And one of the videos she has on YouTube is of her doing a run in her high-heeled shoes, showing how comfortable they are. But what Jodie's really doing is she's transforming the way in which people think about buying shoes, the way in which they can think about the design of those shoes, and the way in which they can think about the customization of those shoes as well. She's tremendously excited by the stuff that she's doing, and it's amazing to see that there are other organizations that are copying her, and it's not just new startup organizations. Traditional organizations selling shoes into this market are changing the way they think about it as well, and looking at whether Shoes of Prey is a model that they should follow. Several of you probably used Uber to come here this morning as well. Fantastic experience, the ability to actually track and believe that you're going to be well satisfied by an experience where someone's going to pick you up, make sure that they get to the venue, that you're going to get your receipt in your inbox, that it's going to be very clear in terms of what you're paying, that it's going to be a comfortable experience. And this change from this organization that was founded in 2009 is having a huge impact on the traditional way in which we think about the way in which we'd interact with taxis, the way in which we'd book taxis, and the types of ways in which we would travel across the organization. In a lot of places, it's leading to the fact that people are actually giving up cars, and particularly in those cities where you have multiple transport options and where you can rely on the volume of Uber taxis or Uber cars that are available, there's no longer that much of a need to necessarily own a car yourself or own more than one car. Uber's not just transforming the way in which they think about transportation, they're transforming the way in which they think about financial services as well. They raised $2.5 billion worth of funding, and that $2.5 billion worth of funding is to help new drivers get on the roads in Uber cars. That should allow them to finance about 200,000 vehicles. And the only requirement they have for those vehicles and for those drivers is for the duration of the leases that they have with Uber, that they effectively just use Uber services. And the great thing for all of us is it introduces a level of competition, it introduces a fantastic service, and it also provides us with more options in terms of getting to the places that we need to get to. And for those of you that live in Sydney, you know how difficult it can be and how challenging it is at times to actually get a taxi to actually arrive on time and take you to the place that you need to go to. The thing I really find interesting about Airbnb is that they have 600 castles listed on their site. So 600 castles that you can go and stay in. And that's in addition to the tens of thousands of different places that you can stay connected in terms of the Airbnb network. There's more than 34,000 cities in which they have locations. There's 192 different countries in which they have people. And in just less than 5 years, they've accumulated more rooms than the entire Hilton hotel chain. Their valuation is higher than Hyatt Intercontinental, Wyndham, and the Ramada hotel chains combined. Now, these are organizations that are typical of the statement that I made right at the beginning, that our lives and the way in which we think about our businesses are being transformed by this move to digital. Research shows that this is making a big impact as well. Some of the research that's been done by organizations such as PwC and others of CEOs talk to the way in which they are focused on the changes that are happening with respect to digital. These statistics give some of those indications. CEOs indicate that the #1 driver that's associated with the way in which they're thinking about transformation in their business is the changes that are associated with going to digital. It's incredible that this technology-led innovation is helping organizations to rethink traditional businesses and the way in which they work and disrupting the way in which organizations think about the things that they're doing. PwC does this research every year, and over time, it continues to focus more and more on how the organizations are transforming through the use of digital. PwC has also asked CEOs, what do they see as the forces that will continue to create a disruption within their organizations going forward? And this is the primary area. So we've seen these new organizations rise up, and we've seen the research that shows that the existing organizations want to focus wholly on the things that are important in terms of them going digital. And that's why we think this is important. And that's why, as a result of all of the presentations that you'll see over the course of the day, I'm sure you'll come to the same conclusion, assuming you haven't already. In fact, I'd venture to say that many of you are here because you want to learn or understand or collaborate with or find ways to make sure that this transformation is happening at an effective rate within your own organization. Larry Page was being interviewed by Charlie Rose at a recent TED conference. I think it was in Vancouver. And this is one of the statements that he made. He spoke, Charlie was asking him about, why is it that you guys invest in all sorts of different things? You have this focus on robots, you have these balloons that you put in the air that are focused in terms of the way in which they provide internet connectivity. There's a whole lot of new things that you guys are doing. And this is a statement that our CEO, Larry Page, made. A lot of businesses fail because they fail to think about the things that they're going to need to be looking at and the ways in which their business is going to change in the future. And we've seen many examples of that. I've highlighted some examples of that in terms of changes that have happened. Blockbuster, which we used to see on almost every street corner, is now, it's very rare that you find that organization, and frequently they're selling off the stock that they have, as is the closest one, or the closest video shop to where I stay. Kodak didn't fully appreciate the change that was happening in terms of digital, and whilst they tried to react to those changes, it has had a profound effect on that brand and a profound effect on the impact that that organization has had. And there's many others as well. Organizations that go digital have a distinct advantage with respect to the benefits that they get. Their profitability increases, and as this slide indicates, there's a 26% improvement in terms of what the return is for those businesses that go digital. We've done some recent research together with Deloitte, and what we try to understand, and this goes to the second premise that I mentioned earlier, is that collaboration has an impact when you think about digital transformation. So what we did together with Deloitte is we tried to determine, does collaboration have a financial value associated with the way in which the GDP overall is created for the economy at large? And we believe that $72 billion is actually raised or is a value that is achieved as a result of collaboration that happens within organizations. The research, which you can download and we can provide you links to, splits it up into a number of different areas. Some of it relates to productivity, some of it relates to quality improvement. Certainly there's some cost associated with collaboration as well. But overall, the value to Australia's economy with respect to collaboration amounts to about $46 billion. And that's bigger than the agricultural sector. And not only that, we believe that there is a significant amount of value that can be raised as a result of organizations collaborating better. Remember what I said at the beginning. What is collaboration? It's all about creating and reasoning and thinking together. within organizations. And it's the focus on that that can help us in terms of the achievement of that extra $9.3 billion in terms of the GDP of our country. Here are some examples of organizations that through their focus on collaboration, the ways in which they actually work together, are realizing some of these benefits. You'll hear from Chris Ridd, the Managing Director of Xero, in a couple of minutes, and so I won't talk too much about what the company does and the way in which they realize these values, and Chris is really passionate about the way in which he talks about these elements. You'll see an example in terms of some of the stuff that we do with Woolworths, and they'll talk to some of the things that are value to them. And when we've spoken to the people at News Corp, they believe that by doing things once has significant savings for them, and the ways in which they interact and use our technologies and the way in which they collaborate significantly and profoundly impacts their organization.
I absolutely love food. I love talking to customers about the food that we're cooking. It's a stone-baked bread, prawn tiger raws. This is our truffle salami, Granny Smith apples for my favourite apple pies.
Woolworths is Australia's largest retailer. Communication in an organisation with 200,000 employees is really important.
How we actually work with those people and engage with those people is a very big challenge. And you can't have effective communication when you're talking to a store. It really is that power of linking and connecting. The tools that we've got now in Google really help enable that. There's a real power in being able to start to personalise people.
Most of my day is sharing a lot of ideas that we have across the company.
Everybody can actually see now what is going on, not just in our store, but even across Australia.
All of our people have a tool that enables us to actually share ideas and engage with each other. We don't have a work system and a home system. We're encouraging that there is a community in a store, but can also link and collaborate outside of work as well. You're a person at work. You're not just selling a product, you're not just doing a process. You actually are you, and you've got your own uniqueness, and we want that. We want our passion for food in all of our people and show that work can be fun.
I think when you hear the story from the customers that we've worked with in terms of how their businesses are transforming and the way in which they think about collaboration and digital transformation, it's much stronger than someone from Google actually standing up and talking about it. And that's why a video like that actually helps a lot in terms of thinking about what organizations have actually done. Digital businesses are fundamentally different to other organizations. These are 5 elements that are associated with the way in which digital businesses are different. They work differently. They work at a scale and they think about a reach which is quite different. And there's a variety of different tools and applications that we have and services that we provide as part of Google that enhance and provide value in terms of each of these 5 areas. They make sure that the collective intelligence of the organization is available to every employee. They don't try and control or restrict access to data. They make sure that people can operate in real time. They make sure that it's easy to do that. They make sure that they use the tools that are available to allow those things to actually happen. And as I mentioned, they give people access to data and they make sure that their data is available for all. They look at ways in which technology can be used within their organizations, and they organize their organizations in such a way that they can be impactful and make a difference for the employees. And they try to make sure that they create an environment that people are drawn to work at. These are all aspects associated with this. We believe that the services and the tools that we provide in our organization actually help you in terms of this digital transformation and help you with the elements that are associated with collaboration. We have a variety of different tools, and when you have the time to spend in our exhibition area outside, you'll have the opportunity to see some of these things in action. We've made sure that there's demonstrations and people available to take you through the ways in which you might be able to use these tools, or perhaps learn more about the use of these tools when you're already using these tools within your organization. Think about how you can use these services. We believe that the digital marketplace, as well as the digital workplace, is enabled by all these elements. And these logos that you see on the slide are indicators of the ways in which each of those 5 elements can provide you with some value, or how you can use those services to provide you with value. YouTube and Google Play and G+ communities, and all of those elements can help you engage at scale in terms of digital marketplaces. The ways in which we think about search, the ways in which we think about Google's cloud platform, and Google's apps platform can help you in terms of collaboration, can help you in terms of competitive intelligence, and can help you make sure that data is adequately a part of the way in which you collaborate and at the core of the way in which you make decisions within your organization. Let me show you an example of some of the ways in which Google is transforming the working experience. If you remember, I started off by saying thank you, which I remain appreciative of. But then I spoke about smartphones and I spoke about smart devices. These are some of the things that you'll start to see in terms of the services that we offer. The idea that we're moving to in terms of suggest and assist, the idea that you can interact with these devices in terms of your voice, and you'll see a demonstration of that shortly, helps you to understand and make sure that we are able to predictively and in the way in which we can suggestively help you in terms of the work that you're doing. For instance, if you're about to have a meeting, we might provide you with more information. And as I mentioned, we'll show you a demonstration of some of that stuff as well. And we may provide you with information that pertains to previous meetings that you had as well. We'll provide you with an indication of traveling time. And if we determine that there's a flight that you have to take, we'll prompt you in terms of saying that you probably should leave for that thing now. And there's an opportunity for you to check in as well. There's ways in which you can actually work through third-party applications and actually capture some of the information that you need too, such as the expenses that you have through platforms like Concur. And this particular slide, I think, is important because it suggests that those services that I was talking about with respect to what Google offers are not just things that you can get from Google, but that there's a whole group of organizations, hundreds of organizations working together on this particular platform, making sure that there are ways in which your company can be more effective. This particular example that we use within Google of Concur for expense management is just one of those examples that help you in terms of the way in which all of these services can work together. So I'd like to show you a video of the way in which you can work across multiple devices to just reinforce that point that I actually had with respect to collaboration and end this section of the presentation. Please play the video.
Good morning.
Let's go. Come on, bud. You want to go for a run?
Okay, Google, play Game Day playlist.
Let's go.
You want some of this? Good boy. All right, Chumpy, we gotta go. We're gonna be late.
Let's go.
Play Game Day playlist.
Text for mom. Do you want to read it?
Thanks, Mom. We'll let you know how it goes. You got this, bud. Good boy. Awesome today, buddy. I'm so proud of you. Watch I Am Legend.
So what I tried to convey over that 20 minutes was three things. The one, I can't dance, and when I do, I look weird when I'm doing it. The other thing is that collaboration is really important, and it actually makes a significant impact with respect to the amount of GDP that we generate as a country, and there's an opportunity for us to generate more. And the other thing, that businesses are transforming, and digital is a part of this transformation. And in order to continue that story, I'd like to invite Maile Carnegie, the Managing Director of Google Australia and New Zealand, to talk more about how that transformation is happening. Maile.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't know about you guys, but I've decided that the reason the dancers were up here is to stay warm, because I don't know about you, but I'm freezing to death. So I'm very happy to be up, and I'm just going to try and turn my technology on up here. So when I get to it. Okay, similar to Kevin, I just want to say a huge thank you very much for coming today. I know it's a long time out of your calendars to come and spend time with us, so again, we really, really appreciate it. What I'm going to be talking about today is actually spending about 15 minutes talking about the consumer. And there's a couple of reasons why we want to do that, but probably the most important one is when you look at this technology revolution that's happening globally, a lot of it and actually is being driven by the users or the consumers, and it's actually now kind of coming back into business. So I just want to make sure that we spend time on it. And I looked at some of the participation lists, and I know there's a huge variety in the people in the audience. So there are some people who are going to know the consumer trends really well, and I apologise to those guys if some of this is a little bit basic. But again, I just wanted to make sure that we were anchored, there's my technology, anchored in a few basic trends. Okay, the first one, before I get going in it, I just want a show of hands. Hands up people in the audience who actually have a smartphone and have it with them. Okay, thank God. Anyone who didn't put your hand up, you should now leave. No, just joking. Okay, so can I get everybody to get your smartphone out? Got it? Okay, now what I want you to do is unlock it. If you haven't put it on silent mode, now would be a good time, but unlock it. Okay, now on the count of 3, I want all of you to hand your phone over to the person to your left. Okay? 1, 2. Okay, yes, I'm just joking. I'm not going to ask you to hand your phone over. The reason why, though, I wanted to do that was because you all heard kind of this nervous kind of twittering and giggling. The reason for that is just like everyone else in the world who has a smartphone, it's actually an incredibly personal item. It's actually an extension of yourself. And so the idea of handing it over to someone you don't know, or actually probably worse, someone you do know, is you're actually exposing a bit of yourself. And so actually the first thing I just wanted to kind of touch on is that when you think about consumer trends, a lot of the time we just talk purely about the data, and I'm going to do that. But one of the most compelling trends that's happening in technology with consumers is this intense personalization that's starting to occur. And technology has kind of gone from being this, rather inert, interchangeable object to something that really, as I said before, is an extension of an individual, an extension of themselves. And if you don't understand that, then you're going to miss something really, really important with the people in your organisations and consumers at large. Because this trend is going to continue, this sense of incredible personalisation and this sense of an extension of self is going to continue as the functionality gets more and more. In fact, there was a really interesting research study recently where they took honeymooners, or people who are just coming back from their honeymoon, and they did an anonymous poll. So they knew that their results were not going to be shown to the person they just married, but they asked them, if you had to lose either your wedding band or your mobile phone, which would you lose? And surprisingly or unsurprisingly, the majority chose to lose their wedding band. So again, it's highly, highly personal. Okay, there's actually a medical term for it now. It's called nomophobia. It's the fear of being without or losing your mobile phone. So hopefully none of you experienced nomophobia. I actually did a bit today because I had to put my technology up on stage for about an hour, so I'm getting a bit jittery. All right, so the other thing I would say is, so now let's get into some of the data, and a lot of you guys know this, so I'm going to kind of go over it relatively quickly. But as you know, Australia is an incredibly connected society. So, this is actually old data. About a year ago, we were up to about 65% of Australians had a smartphone. That number will only have grown. But the other thing is that, as we extend into more and more 4G coverage, the way the phone is being used is changing quite dramatically. If I look at things like YouTube, which is Australia's largest video network, we are getting more and more an explosion in YouTube videos and basically data coming, as you know, through the phone, as both the coverage of smartphone increases, but as importantly, the 4G coverage increases. And we're also seeing that play out very much in terms of media. And so if you look at how media is being consumed, increasingly it's being consumed on phones. And phones is not only kind of at the epicenter of consumers' work, and communication, it's also becoming the epicenter of their media and their entertainment. And so to put some kind of numbers around that, if you look at how consumers used to absorb media, there was a lot of it which was on newspapers and in print. But we're at the point now where almost 90% of all media is consumed on screens, and the majority of that is actually via a smartphone. So media consumption for consumers is really changing quite exponentially. The other thing that's happening, again, as you know, is really the diversification of screens. And even up to 2 years ago, people only had just over 2 connected devices, and that's gone up now to 3. And as Kevin said, on average, people are looking at their phones over 150 times a day. And it's a little bit like smokers. If you ask a smoker how many cigarettes they probably say they have about 5. When you observe them, they probably have closer to 20. So it's the same thing. If you ask the general user, how often do you look at your phone, they dramatically underestimate how much you are actually looking at and interacting with your phone. So really, the smartphone, as you guys all know, is really at the backbone now of media and basically the consumer's interaction with technology. Okay, you all need to pray for me now, because I'm going to try and do a live technology demo. We'll see how we go. Okay, so what I want to do now is just show why is the phone becoming such an important and critical thing in the lives of consumers. As I said, it's a combination of obviously coverage of them, but also the functionality. So I'm going to give you an example of the type of functionality which is really driving the way consumers are using phones differently. So if we could just go onto my phone. Right, okay. So I'm going to do an example of how I use my phone for work. But if we go and say, what am I doing today?
Here are the events you requested. First up, calendar entry today at 5:45 p.m.
Wow, I wish that was the case. Someone's cleared my calendar. Awesome. Okay, so it looks like I have a dinner tonight. Show me pictures of sepia restaurant. Pictures of God, that's good. We'll try again, as I said. I'm surprised Larry Page hasn't come up with that one. Show me pictures of sepia restaurant, Sydney.
Pictures of sepia restaurant, Sydney.
How do I get there? I can't hear.
Getting directions to sepia restaurant and wine bar.
Do I need an umbrella?
No, it isn't raining in New South Wales 2015. It's 13 degrees and partly cloudy.
Okay, so that's just a small version of how, for example, I would use that. And I also use it to obviously to get information as well, not just of basic things like that, but it's a government meeting. We don't need to get into who I'm seeing, but let's pretend it's Malcolm. So let me see. Malcolm Turnbull.
According to Wikipedia, Sir Malcolm...
Close. We'll try one more time. Malcolm Turnbull. No, God. I was close. Oh, Mount Turnbull. It should not get into the media. Okay, one more time. Malcolm Turnbull. All right. Okay, so again, increasingly people are using their phone, and when you start thinking about wearables and the fact that voice recognition is, believe it or not, getting much, much better, particularly if you can put on a really bad American accent, but it is getting much, much better. It is being used fundamentally differently by myself, but also more importantly, kind of the general public as they think about, because a lot of people at the moment are seeing wearables, and without really good voice recognition, you can kind of look at it and say, you know, why would you bother? Well, you've got to imagine as voice recognition gets much better, the type of functionality that we're going to be able to have with it. Okay, if we can go back to the other screen. All right. So as I said, you know, what we're starting to see is a lot of divergence of different type of screens that, you know, that users are, you know, are interacting with. And, you know, we've talked about a couple of them. Obviously, one is the phone, but there's also the tablet, obviously the PC. But the other really big one is the TV. But actually, before I get that, the other thing I want to show, we talked a lot about the divergence, but the other thing we're seeing with general users and consumers is they really, because of the divergence of devices, we're starting to see increasing demand for convergence of experience. And so they really want what they do across all these different tablets to work seamlessly together. So I'll try one more time, and then we will let go of technology. So if we can just put onto my tablet. Okay, great, you see my password, awesome. All good. All right, they've actually stuck this to the desk, right? So we'll see how we go. Okay, we'll start over, I'm actually gonna start over here for a minute and just, oh, someone followed me. I don't know who K8 is. All right. Who is Malcolm Turnbull married to? Ah, we've got Lucy Turnbull. Don't know if you can see that. No? Ooh. All right. How many children does she have? Okay, you probably, I don't know if you can see that, but the reality is now that, consumers are expecting that they can start a conversation or start a video or start something on one screen and then be able to drop it down, pick up another, and it all seamlessly works. And again, there's a lot, increasingly if you look at what's happening, whether it would be search or other things, they need to be contextual. Someone doesn't want to have to continue repeating, who is Malcolm Turnbull, how many children does Malcolm Turnbull have. They want the computer to just know that when I say who is she or what is she, that they're talking about Malcolm Turnbull or whoever that search is. Now, obviously, for my children, they're going to be looking at things like, I don't know, One Direction or God knows what. They're not going to be looking at Malcolm Turnbull, but they are using all of these things, obviously, for their use as well. And the other thing that, can we go back to the... And the other thing that, the consumers are wanting is not only this seamless interaction across all of the handheld devices, but increasingly they're wanting it on the big screen as well. Because really their TV in most homes have got the best speakers. It's obviously more social. And so there's a real desire to make that really seamless and interactive experience happen on TV as well. So I'm going to have another show of hands. Hands up anyone who has a smart TV. Okay, quite a number. Okay, keep your hands up, keep them up. Okay, now I want you to only keep your hand up if you've actually connected that smart TV and used the internet on it in the last week. Okay, not many. Actually, there's more hands up, I shouldn't be surprised. If you basically talk to the general consumer or user of a smart TV, single digits have actually used it in any type of consistent basis to get onto the internet. And the reason for that is that they're not really smart TVs. The interface makes them, quite honestly, pretty dumb TVs because they're so hard to use. And that's why actually Google, if you haven't seen it, we've launched something called Chromecast. And I think we're going to be giving some of them away sometime later today. So, hopefully some of you will get them. They're only $49 if you don't get one today. But it basically turns any TV into a smart TV. And if I was at home and I wanted to learn more about, let's say Malcolm Turnbull, well, can we go back on to, I don't care which one. That one? Okay. Ooh, turned off, awesome. You can see my, in case you missed it the first time, it is indeed 12:11. Okay. YouTube videos of Malcolm Turnbull. Okay, I'm going to give it, oh, it got up, see, it knew what I wanted. So, you know, I would now just press the button on that and cast that to the big screen if I was at home, and, you know, increasingly, that's how people want to interact, or consumers want to interact with their technology. All right, let me wind up a little bit now. Okay, so again, you hear a lot of people talking about 3 screens or 4 screens, where in the reality, when I'm working with our clients, we're increasingly getting them ready for 6 screens. Because, you know, everyone knows that wearables is coming, but we also know that in-car is about to explode as well. And we just announced with Android that we're obviously going to be going in and extending our SDK to include, obviously, wearables and in-car. So we need to make sure as an organisation we're very much ready for what's coming, and that is a continued diversification of screens. And just to give you an idea of how Google is thinking wearable, and some of this is going to work, I'm just going to show a quick video.
Does that?
Just got a jellyfish warning.
Want to try counting?
Let's go to Zuma.
Morning, kids.
Reply, be there in 2.
There it is. Okay, Google, what's the Syracuse score? Yay! Woo!
Okay, Google, open garage.
Those girls must have been really cold. All right, so a couple of things just to wrap up on. So if you think about the people who are trying to organise, you know, or, you know, make sure that the brands and the organisations you work with are really connecting with consumers, one of the really, really difficult things that we're trying to help them with at the moment is how you actually help connect with consumers in the matters that really matter to them. And the reason for that is that the diversification of screens, the fact that people are always on, mean that the days, as you all know, of having TV, print and maybe radio are long, long gone. And the number of touch points available to connect with a user are exponentially growing. And so trying to help the marketing departments, the consumer experience departments really figure out when are those matters at really moment, what are the right messages to get to the right people at the right time, is getting increasingly complex and increasingly difficult. And so that's what we're spending a lot of time working on, and it's something that obviously needs a lot of help internally from everyone in this room to help those guys as well. But if I only had to, you know, I guess leave you with a couple of messages, really looking at the consumers, it's a couple of things. The first one is where I started, which is consumers are getting increasingly passionate about not necessarily the technology, but what it means for them and how it really, really represents them. So if you're not understanding that the people in your organisations are fundamentally consumers and their level of connection with their technology is going up every single month, every single quarter, as the technology is getting better and better and it becomes more and more an extension of them, their passion around getting the right technology is going up. The second thing I would say is that we all, 20 years ago, as you all know, used to go into work to get the best technology, increasing that disconnect about the fact that the best technology is in the hand of the consumers, not in the hand of the companies. If you kind of marry that passion for technology and that passion for it being an extension to themselves, and the fact that organisations increasingly don't have as good a technology as a consumer has in his or her own home, you're seeing an increasing passion within probably your organisation to have better technology and better tools. And so I really, really am thrilled that you're here today because, I mean, there's many ways, there's many tools available, but really, hopefully, for some of you, you look at what Google's doing and hopefully some of it will fit for your organization. My parting thought is I've actually only been with Google for a year. So I joined in July last year, and I actually came from a company which is, in some people's eyes, a bit of a dinosaur. It's called Procter & Gamble. It's 175 years old. So I've basically gone from a 175-year-old dinosaur into a 15-year-old adolescent. And I consistently get asked, what are the things which are different about those organisations? And obviously there are the easy things like, oh, the food, the free food, the great offices, all that stuff. But I have to tell you, probably the biggest change is the culture. And one of the most fundamental part of that culture is the technology and the tools that are available for me now at Google. The level of collaboration, the agility, all those things are just mind-blowingly different versus when I was at Procter & Gamble. So again, thank you very much for coming. I hope you walk away learning something that is going to help you back in your day jobs, and I hope it warms up in this room a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Great, thanks, Smiley. You've seen a little bit about how organizations are transforming. We've talked a little bit about the importance of collaboration. And since every consumer is working as well, we want people to be able to work the way in which they live. And so those aspects are all part of making sure that you can have that sort of experience. And a couple of weeks ago, we had a conference in San Francisco called I/O. And at that conference, we made a number of different announcements about things that we were doing and ways in which we were changing some of the services that we deliver. And so I'd like to invite Tarun Bhatnagar, the Director of Google Enterprise, on stage to talk a little bit more about what we're doing in what we now call Drive for Work. Tarun.
All right, good morning, everyone. How many of you are cold? So I'm going to ask a lot of easy questions so that you all raise your hands, and then we just keep raising our hands and we get a workout. Actually, great to be back in Australia. I grew up in this side of the world, so if you zoom the map to about as high as you can and you look at the right side of the world, I grew up in Bangkok, so not that close, but pretty close. And you know, it was interesting growing up. I always looked up to my dad, and I always thought about how he worked and what work looked like for him. And it was interesting, because he would get up in the morning, he would have breakfast with us, no phones, no devices, nothing. He would commute to work. Commuting in Bangkok is pretty nasty, so he would read a newspaper. Obviously, he wasn't driving himself. When at work, he would work. At lunch, he would eat lunch. And then when he came back home, he spent time with us. It was amazing, right? His life was completely compartmentalized, and he just had one thing that he had to do in each of those compartments. That notion does not exist today anymore. Fast forward 30 years later, and we've seen some major shifts. The first one being the fact that work happens absolutely everywhere. So Kevin actually used this example. Just be completely honest with you. How many of you pick up your phone the very first thing in the morning with one eye shut and you look at it and you can't read the email, but you feel compelled to look at it? A lot of you. How many of you actually stop working when you get home and don't check email or work at all by the time you're home at 5, 6, or whatever time it is? I need to talk to you people. You're either lying, or I really, really envy you, because I have no idea how you do that. But here's the transformation that's happened. The blend between our personal life, or the gap between our personal life and our work life, doesn't exist. It's just completely muddied, for good or for bad. But as a result, we're innovating at a much rapid pace, and we're far more productive than we've ever been in the past. In fact, according to Forrester research, 37% of business workers worked from 3 or more locations every month. And the expectation is that those workers remain equally as productive. So that's the first trend. The second trend that's happened, and the second major shift, is that people want to not only be productive wherever they are, but on whatever device it is that they use. So Just a show of hands, how many of you, and keep your hands up if it's pertinent to you, how many of you at least have one device? Device being a mobile phone, a tablet, or a laptop. I see people that are reading their mobile phones and not raising their hands, so it's kind of bizarre for me. But okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. We have 14 in our household. And mind you, I have 2 kids under 2, so their devices don't count. 14. In fact, last week, my wife came to me and said, you know what? Your devices are now taking up more closet space than my shoes are. She either has tiny feet or she's completely lying. So, but you get the point, right? That we're starting to collect more devices, and we want to be able to work on any device. And the reality is we want to be highly productive on all those devices. So according to the same survey that Forrester did, 53% of information workers had at least 3 or more devices at work. And I think Maile had a similar slide that she projected up there. People expect to work not only from anywhere, but on all those devices. And they expect all their data and all their files to be available to them at all times. The third big shift that's happening is in the type of data that we consume. So, you know, in the past when we worked, it was all about email and documents and spreadsheets and presentations. And now that world has completely changed. It's changed for us as consumers. It's changed for us as business users. So another personal reference. My wife just gave birth to our second child 5 weeks ago. So actually really blessed to be here. I get to sleep. But for those that have ever gone through this experience, you'll know this, right? It's all about diapers and sleepless nights and spending a lot of money on things like car seats. So we had to buy a car seat for my infant. And I don't know what the regulations are in Australia, but in the US, there are all sorts of regulations. It has to be rear-facing, buckle down with a seatbelt going through, and if it moves more than like an inch in either direction, you failed. You're really bad at it. So first thing I do when I get the car seat is I take out the owner's manual, I go to the car, I take the seat, I try to install it. 45 minutes later, with a sore back, I come back with the car seat, and I tell my wife, you know what? We're just going to carry the son in our lap. Forget this. This doesn't work. What does my wife do? She actually takes the owner's manual, throws it in the trash, goes to YouTube, looks up Britax car seat installation, sees a really clean 5-minute video on how to install your car seat. She goes and installs it, and it's done. In 10 minutes, she did what I couldn't accomplish in 45 minutes. Right? And that's what's happening. That's the shift that's happening. We're moving from documents, from spreadsheets, from emails, to rich media, to videos, to PDFs, to images. And as more and more of these businesses like Britax are going digital, the amount of information that their employees want to consume is tremendous. It's absolutely enormous. And what we need is we need to make sure that we can accommodate that exponential growth in the amount of data that's going to be available to everyone. So we've talked about these 3 trends, right? People want to work anywhere, at any time, on any device, across all files. The problem is, as easy and noble as it sounds, it's an incredibly complex problem. So first of all, data sits in multiple places, right? It's in emails, it's in your thumb drives, it's with your vendors, it's with your colleagues, and wherever else. And it makes it even harder to access all that information as you are on your mobile devices, as you are all here today. And what's even worse is version control. So I don't know if you noticed, but the slide that Kevin put up when he introduced me, we purposely kind of put a little thing at the bottom that said, you know, Tarun, Drive for Work, final version 14.2. Do you remember those days? You remember how you had to go into your inbox and actually search through 15 documents and figure out which one was the final version? And then you finally get to one that says, final, do not edit version 2.2. Like, what does it mean for version 1? What do you do? And it's just really bizarre. And that's what the systems today are built for. They're built to be complex, and that's not the world that we live in, and that's not the world that business users live in. And you know, that problem is not just a problem for business users. It's actually a huge problem for IT users, IT leaders as well. See, business users now, because of their consumer lives, as Maile pointed out, they demand extreme simplicity. And your challenge as an IT leader is you need to make sure that you provide them that simplicity. Because if you don't do so, they will start bringing in their own consumer experiences and products into work and start using them, because they can be far more productive that way. So with those trends in mind, we actually designed Google Drive for Work. Really, Drive for Work is incredibly simple. It gives all the users a single place to store all your work information. It's safe, lets you access your information from anywhere, on any device, more importantly, all your files. And for the IT folks, incredibly easy to manage, simple, and easy to support. In fact, let's take a live example of a company here, very local to you guys, Dick Smith, one of the largest retailers over here. I believe they have 350 stores geographically dispersed, over 4,000 employees, and pre-Drive, the way their communication used to work was not incredibly efficient. Right? 350 stores, you have to get a lot of information out to them. Policy documents, control documents, whatever it may be. And they resorted to using emails and in some cases fax machines. And it would take 24 hours for that information sometimes to make it to the store. That is about as far from real time as you can get. The solution for them, they started using Google Sites to really create a one-stop communication hub for all this information, with a back-end repository being Google Drive that stored all types of files that any of those 4,000 employees needed to access. And the beauty of this was their communications became so much easier. It was efficient, it was secure, it was safe, it was streamlined, and it took less than 2 FTEs to really build this entire ecosystem. So fantastic. It was built with ease in mind. So let's talk about the fundamentals of how we built Google Drive for Work and really what it means. You have two major audiences, right? You have the business user and you have the IT leaders. For the business user, it's really simple. It has to be an incredible experience, agnostic of whatever device you use. It has to be built around the notion of teams, not just individual productivity. It has to work well with all types of files, not just docs and spreadsheets and slides that we're used to. And it has to really foster a truly collaborative environment, because that's the trend that we see in the market. For the IT leaders, you get to use Google's data center, which means no infrastructure constraints, unlimited storage, reliability at 99.9%. And what you can do as an IT leader is you can stop worrying about capacity and focus on more mission-critical business needs. In addition to that, Drive comes with major certifications. It comes with granular security controls, audit reports. It also lets you manage and centralize what's happening in your environment, in your company. It has incredibly great admin controls and powerful visualization reports so you can see who's sharing what kind of information across your entire organization. And more importantly, we've made it extensible. Over 100 pre-built extensions and a powerful SDK that works with Android. So let's dig deeper into each of these. How many of you believe your companies are mobile first? Just one? Wow. Okay. So it's interesting. The whole notion and the whole comment around mobile first started probably about a year ago. And everyone talks about no matter what you do, you have to cater to the mobile user. And it's no longer just a notion, right? For the most part, it's becoming a reality. So let me tell you what we do at Google. At Google, we do two things. And Maile picked a different day. But Tuesdays are called Tablet Tuesdays, and Mondays are called Mobile Mondays. And what that means is Google employees are actually encouraged on those 2 days to use only that device to do their work. If you haven't done so, I would encourage you to try it. It's actually a phenomenal experience. And it works for our engineers. Our engineers love it because it allows them to really design what those devices ought to look like and their capabilities ought to look like for the work that people do on a daily basis. So mobile first is no longer just a trend, it's a reality. And with the prevalence of mobile, what we're seeing is Drive not only lets you find and search all your files, including handwritten notes, but it actually lets you make edits to those files right then, right there, wherever you are, as we keep talking about those trends. It's also designed around the notion of teams. So it's no longer just about sharing your documents and syncing your data, but it's about collaborating in real time. It's about sitting together as a team wherever you are and really, truly working together. And that's what Drive's been built for. It's also designed to work with all your files. So we've talked about the fact that, you know what? Most people use very different type of media, very different types of files. It comes with 40 types of file viewers. It works with all major file types, including editing capabilities, and best yet, on a mobile device or a desktop, you can actually not only view your Office files, you can edit them without having to have Office installed in either one of those devices. And then finally, collaboration. It's really built to truly transform the way you work today. It comes with our editing tools, it comes with social, intranet, video chat, search capabilities to help people transform the way they work. Just the same capabilities that you have as you do as consumers. On the IT side, it's relatively straightforward, right? We wanted to keep it simple. And the simplest thing we could do is remove all complexity that you have as it pertains to making sure you have to manage storage, making sure you have to make sure you have enough capacity as you grow, as your business grows, as you hire more people. As a result, Drive for Work is unlimited for businesses. We announced it at Google I/O, unlimited, not a typo, no limits, no more resource calculations. We take care of those problems for you, and everything is really done for you. And that lies to the core of it allows you to really focus on taking those transformations forward and bringing an amazing experience for your business users. So we talked about 3 major trends. Let me just end on that note and repeat those. Right? People want to work anytime, anywhere, on any device, and on any type of file. And perhaps the more important trend, as one of my colleagues says, is not really this move or these trends that we're seeing, but it's this move from sharing and syncing to creating, thinking, and reasoning together as employees. Drive for Work is really designed as a tool to enable that transformation, enable that move. With over 5 million businesses using Google Apps, 190 million active users on Google Drive, Drive for Work is really ready. It's ready for you as IT leaders to help take your organizations through the transformation and the trends that we see in the marketplace. Thank you.
Where did MapReduce and big data started? It started in the web scale companies that had to do analysis of log files. Where did the notion of using cheap hardware to build cost-effective systems come from? It came from the web scale companies. Everything we're doing today had its origins in the web scale companies, and that's something that's continuing. And in fact, if you think about Google, for the past 15 years, we have been building out the world's best infrastructure to build our applications. Think about it. It's 1998. You're Google. You are audacious enough to say, I'm going to build a search engine for the World Wide Web. That means I have to store multiple copies of the entire World Wide Web. It's 1998. What database do you use? SQL Server? Oracle? There's no technology that existed that was capable of building the kind of scale that we were trying to build. So we had to invent new database technologies, new networking technologies, new file systems. And what we are fundamentally doing with the Google Cloud Platform is we're letting you take your applications and run that on the same infrastructure in the same data centers that we use to run our applications. The Cloud Platform is actually a series of services ranging from compute services for hosting applications to storage services for things like databases, non-relational databases, file storage, and fully managed data services. On the compute side, we have both infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. So you can choose whether you want the full flexibility of virtual machines or whether you want the most productive environment out there. On the storage front, we have a range of options from fully hosted MySQL to the world's largest NoSQL database. I'm just going to focus on 2 of these today in the interest of time. First, let me talk about Compute Engine. Google Compute Engine is a service for hosting virtual machines inside the Google data centers. What this means is you have the full flexibility of using whatever operating systems or open source packages you want. In fact, we just announced earlier this year the addition of Red Hat Enterprise Linux and Windows Server 2008. So you can take your workloads that you're currently running on-premise, transfer them into the Google Cloud Platform, and run them on a very cost-effective pay-per-hour basis. BigQuery is our fully managed big data offering. How many of you are doing some sort of big data projects now? A few folks? I venture to say if you talk to the engineers who are really doing your big data work, 50% of their time is not actually doing data analytics. It's standing up infrastructure and building Hadoop clusters and trying to figure out how to make HDFS work, all of which has nothing to do with actually getting business insights from your data. BigQuery is a fully managed data service. You don't ever decide how many virtual machines or how much disk or how much memory you want. You simply upload large quantities of data and you get a very friendly SQL syntax that allows you to analyze and query that data. It's built on the technology that we use at Google to analyze log files. You can imagine at Google, given how many servers we have a lot of log files. Our reliability engineers need to search those. So we built a technology to do that, and BigQuery represents that. Fast, scalable, very cost-effective way that lets you focus on getting insights from data instead of standing up clusters of infrastructure. Of course, when you're an enterprise organization, picking a platform is not just about price or performance or CPUs or disks or memory. It's also about, is the company going to be a partner for you, and are they going to be there for you? On the cloud platform, we have a full range of enterprise support offerings. We've also been working very hard on certifications because we know that for customers like yourself, one of the things you look for is trusted external providers to verify that your partner's doing what they said they would do. So we have ISO 27001, SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3 certifications. For the US, we have HIPAA certification, which is a privacy certification for healthcare. And we're continuing to roll out more certifications over the coming years so that you have the trust to know that, that we're meeting our commitments to you. Turning locally to what we're doing in the Asia-Pacific region, we have expanded considerably our presence in Asia-Pacific. We have a Google Cloud data center in Taiwan that we recently opened. It's our first one in Asia. We're going to continue to aggressively roll out new locations and data centers over the coming year. Initially, we started with just Compute Engine, Cloud SQL, and Cloud Storage, but you can look for us to expand our data center footprint in Asia-Pacific over the next year as well. So given that, are we actually getting any usage? Well, it turns out that we're seeing phenomenal growth in the adoption of the cloud platform. We currently have 4.75 million active applications that are serving web traffic out of the Google Cloud Platform. That's growing at a phenomenal rate year over year. App Engine is serving 28 billion web requests per day. Now, to put that in context, to the best of our knowledge, Wikipedia serves about 2.6 billion web requests a day. So every day, App Engine, which is just one part of our platform, is serving the traffic of roughly 10 Wikipedias every single day. So that means that you know that we have the capability to scale to meet your biggest needs. And think about it, if you're a developer and you're building either a public-facing web app of any kind, you live in this world of hope and fear. You hope that you go viral and you get tons of traffic, and you're deathly afraid that you're going to go viral and you're going to get tons of traffic. With App Engine, we actually deliver that sort of scalability, and I'll talk more about that with an example customer in a moment. And Cloud Data Store is, to our knowledge, the world's largest NoSQL database. Every month, Cloud Data Store has 6.3 trillion operations, either read or write operations. Now, I don't know about you, but no matter how you slice it, a trillion is a big number. And so this is a very highly reliable, distributed NoSQL database that's built into the cloud platform. And we're seeing great adoption among a number of customers. Netflix is using us for archival and disaster recovery. Web Filings is a US company that does the financial reporting for nearly all of the major Fortune 500 companies. Their entire business is built on top of Google Cloud Platform. Wix is a web hosting company in Israel that's building their business on the cloud platform. So we're seeing a wide variety of companies in both the public web sector and in the corporate sector building their applications. I want to call out one new one that just shows the scalability that customers get with the platform. How many of you have heard of a mobile app called Secret? A few of you? If you haven't, your kids have. Secret is a social sharing application. And what's phenomenal about them is they have one back-end developer. And in 2 months, they had a 1,000x growth in the number of daily active users. They had a 10x growth in one single day. And they survived that with literally just one back-end developer. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was a back-end developer and I worked on a project where the number of users was going up 10x in a day, I don't think I'd sleep very well. It turns out Secretly is built entirely on top of Google App Engine, so literally they didn't have to do anything. The platform simply scaled up as their traffic and their needs scaled up. That's the kind of freedom you get when you're not having to manage your own infrastructure and when you're using infrastructure that Google has built, because Google has built our infrastructure to withstand that kind of scalability. Because being at Google means solving Google-sized problems. And locally, we're seeing good adoption as well. A couple companies I want to point out. We talked a little bit about Shoes of Prey earlier. They're a great company because they're also using BigQuery as part of their shopping experience. When you go on and you specify a custom shoe, they're doing BigQuery analysis of past purchases to see which kind of shoes might go, what kind of designs might go well together based on what previous people have built. Sneaking Duck is a prescription eyeglasses company that allows you to custom design the frames of your eyeglasses. That's actually built on App Engine that allows them to very quickly narrow down from thousands of different possibilities down to a few choices per user. Those are just 2 local Australian companies that are using the cloud platform to power their business. But of course, when you think about what's happening in the cloud, you immediately think about cost effectiveness, because initially that's why most companies get in the cloud, because you're tired of paying to buy and operate your own data centers. And if you look at what's happening in the cloud, there's been this gap. Public cloud prices have dropped somewhere around 8% a year for the past 8 years, which seems like a good rate, except for the fact that hardware costs have dropped something like 20 to 30% a year. And that's opened up this gap. And at Google, we really feel that that's not right. You should benefit from all of the economies of scale that we can get by building and operating our data centers. So earlier this year, we made a significant set of price reductions to really lead the industry back to prices that track Moore's law. But I think more importantly is getting to simplicity. The whole premise of the cloud was that you could just buy what you need when you needed it. But somewhere along the line, cloud pricing got complicated with 1-year commitments and 3-year commitments and lock-in and upfront payments. So the way Google Cloud works is you don't have to do any of that. You simply use the resources you want, and we automatically apply discounts based on how much compute you use. If you run a machine 100% of the time, we automatically give you a 30% discount. If you run it 60% of the time, we give you a little bit less of a discount. And the key here is we do this with no upfront payments, no lock-in, no complexity. Because after all, the whole point of the cloud was that you would be able to get high performance, low cost computing without any need to provision or reserve. And that's really what the heart of what we want to get to in the cloud platform. We want to give you the ability to run your application on Google scale, Google quality infrastructure with the guarantee that you're going to get the best performance and the lowest price. And with that, I want to thank you for listening, and I'll bring Kevin back up and we'll wrap up today.
Thanks, Greg. While Greg was talking, I was reading through some of the tweets that have gone through. It's really interesting to get the feedback real time and get some thoughts around what people are actually saying. And I encourage you to actually look at it. And it's great that you can kind of see both sides of what people are thinking about all the things that we're actually doing and what this means in terms of change and whether or not this is impactful in terms of the environment within which we work. I'd like to thank all of the people that participated in presenting as part of the keynote.